In this video, we're going to create some functionality to open and close our skill tree widget that we just created, and we're going to do so in a customizable and modular way from the component that we created earlier. So now that we've created our component and added it to our player controller, which is now being used in our game, we can design a way to open and close the skill tree. A rudimentary way to do this would just be to open up the player controller, right-click, and then choose a keyboard event and just call the function that opens it from here. But this approach has a couple problems. It's not using the enhanced input system, and if you want to add the skill tree system to another project, you need to remember to do this in every project, making the system less modular. So instead of doing it this way, we'll delete that, compile, close. So we'll go down to our MISC data folder, right click, go down to input, and we'll create an input action for it because it's going to be hooked into enhanced input system. And we'll call this IA for input action skill tree. And we'll open it up, and under triggers, we'll add a trigger. And we'll go down to pressed, and that's all we need to do in here. Save and close. And we'll right click again, go down to input, and go to input mapping context. IMC for input mapping context skill tree. It's going to have its own mapping context, and this way we can add it on top of other input mappings that we have. So we'll open it up, add, and choose IA skill tree, expand this again, and you can make it whatever key you want. I'll make mine E, save and close, and we'll create one more piece of data, right click, go up to blueprint, blueprint interface. We're going to create an interface for the whole skill tree system, and we'll start with this function here. So I skill tree PC component, open it up, and we'll name this open/close skill tree. We'll make a category for it, skill tree pro. The benefit to putting things in categories which are in interfaces is that with an interface you'll usually use it from all sorts of places in your game. It'll be accessible from everywhere in your game. So if you have a bunch of interfaces in your game, having things categorized really clarifies what's what, and it lessens the confusion. So for now, we'll compile and close that, and we'll go back up to components and open up our component, and we'll go to open full blueprint editor, and we'll go over to class settings, imported interfaces, and find our I skill tree PC component interface. And now it's added over here. Compile. Now we can add the input action that we created. So IA skill tree. And we also want to create one more thing. We'll right click, go up to blueprints, and we'll create a blueprint function library. And we'll call this FL for function library skill tree pro. Open it up. And the reason we're creating a function library is so that this system is accessible from anywhere in our game. So we're only going to have one function in this function library. We'll call it skill tree pro, like this, and you'll see why in a minute. World context, get player controller, put in the world context, and we'll find component by tag. It's going to be an actor component we'll leave it at, and it will be skill tree pro PC. We're going to check if it's valid. And if it is valid, we will return the component. And we'll change the name to skill tree PC component. And the last thing we want to do is come up here and make this a pure function. Compile and close. Now if we right click and type in skill tree and go to here, FL skill tree pro, this is the function library we created. So now we can talk to the skill tree from anywhere in our game. So now we'll call that interface function we created, open close skill tree message, and we'll comment it input action to open close skill tree. Now we're going to implement the interface event open close skill tree. And in case we decide to make this multiplayer later, hint, hint, we're going to check if it's a dedicated server, make sure that it's not, so that this only happens on the client. And you can just hold B and left click, create a branch. So if it's not a dedicated server, we'll come over here, create a variable, call it skill tree widget, and we'll make it a user widget. And the reason we're making it this base class instead of the more specific widget is so that this is lighter. If we made it the more specific widget, then all of the functionality for that widget would always be loaded in here in our player controller component, which would always be in our player controller. We don't want it to be heavy. We want it to be a lightweight system. So we just use the base class with interfaces, and we're gonna control drag. And what we'll do here is we'll close it if it's open, and we'll open it if it's closed. So we'll drag off, see if it's valid. If it is valid, then that means it's open. We'll copy this, paste over here, and we'll use that base functionality we created yesterday, fade out, then destroy. We'll also alt drag, set it to null, and this way next time we do this check, it will be not valid and it can open. And the last thing we'll do here is get player controller and set input mode game only. And the reason we're doing this is because we're closing the UI and we want to refocus on the game. And we can comment this, remove previous UI. And actually that's just the part that removes the previous UI. And we'll create a new function here, a new event, create UI. And we'll call that here, create UI. And now here we can comment this whole thing, open, close, skill tree. And now just a note, the reason we're not doing this, where we just, with the enhanced input, go right into this code, is so our game code can call this as well. If we did it this way, the only way to open and close the skill tree would be with that input, but maybe in our game we might down the road want an event to trigger the tree to open, like maybe when you gain a research point, the tree automatically opens or something like that. So this just leaves that open for possibility. So we'll drag this back over here. Now we're going to come up here and create one more variable, and we're going to call it skill tree widget soft class. And we're also going to make it a user widget, but go down here to soft class reference. Compile, we're going to drag in that reference, and we're going to async load. Before we forget, we'll set it to the WBP skill tree. And the reason we're doing it this way is so the skill tree is only loaded into our runtime memory when it's open. So it's not draining any resources in our game all the time that it's not. We'll drag off here, cast to user widget. And be careful about this, because when you use an async node in Blueprints, it automatically connects these two wires, and this is going to cause a game crash. You need to make sure that this wire is connected to completed. You do not want to execute this code until it is completed. Otherwise, it will try to load a null reference. And that's the danger of using soft references and why you have to know what you're doing. Just make sure you're dragging off of completed. Right click, get player controller. Right click here, create widget. And we'll plug these in. Now we can alt drag our skill tree widget over here and set it, and also add to viewport. And we'll set input game and UI. We'll copy the player controller, and we'll drag in our skill tree widget as the focus widget. Go down to lock always. And now we can call that other base widget function that we created, fade in message. And now we can come over here and comment this, async load and spawn skill tree. And the whole thing we can say create UI. And again, just simply what it's doing is when the tree is open, we close it, and when it's closed, we open it. But it's still not going to work because we still haven't added the mapping context. So the last thing we'll do is we'll come up here, and we'll go to begin play. We'll copy this functionality from here because we only want this to be on the client. We'll get player controller, enhanced input, and add mapping context. We're going to right-click the mapping context, promote to variable, compile, and we'll set it to the input mapping context we created. Okay, and one thing we forgot to do is we forgot to add the tag to our BPC Skilltree PC, this component. So if we go into the function library we created and just copy the tag name, Skilltree Pro PC, and close it again, come back over here, go into class defaults, add that to the component tags here. And the reason we're doing it this way with a tag instead of get component is so it's not always loaded into our game. Now if we open up our game and right click on the game viewport to get focus and then press the input key that we set, I set E, you can see the number 10 pop up in the middle, and that means the widget's opening, because if you go back to it here, you'll remember that research points is right there in the middle. Now, one quick thing we want to fix is we don't want to always have to click on the game viewport once we open it, so we can solve that by coming into Maps, opening up PC, and then making Begin Play, and on Begin Play, set input mode to game only. And we can just put a reference of self into the player controller, compile, close, and now when we open it up, it automatically has focus. We press our key, we can see the tree. And there's one more thing we want to fix. Currently, if we change our mapped input key, the old keys that were mapped are going to stay inside the context, because that's the way this works. So the way around that is on Begin Play with this component, we can just unmap and remap whatever keys are currently in there. So we'll just put that functionality in here now. We'll drag in the mapping context, and we'll choose Unmap All, and that will clear it out. And now we're going to create a new variable here, and we're going to call it open/close widget keys. And we'll make it the key type, and we'll make it an array. Compile, drag it in, do a for each, drag in the mapping context, and we'll map key. And we'll map each key that we set to the input action that we created. And what this does, we'll compile, is it allows us to come over here to class defaults. You can see here we have these open-close widget keys. So now we can just add whatever keys we want. So we'll add whichever one you want, E for me. And if we fire up our game, there it is. We're doing it this way for two reasons. Number one, because it's an array, we can have it work with gamepad inputs, keyboard inputs, and things like that. We can have a bunch of different inputs which will open this. And number two, like we said earlier, we want to have all of the functionality in this component. Now, one problem that we see here is it's already being cluttered up. This class defaults is already being cluttered up with things that we never need to change and we never need to set. So the way we can solve that is these variables over here, Skilltree Widget and the Skilltree Widget soft class, we can come over to them. We can click on the advanced display for both of those. And while we're at it, we'll make the soft reference private. And we'll do the same for the mapping context, advanced display and private. Compile. And now we come over here to class defaults, and the only thing that we see is what we want to see. Everything else is in this category, which we can just leave closed. And when we create a child blueprint of this, we won't see these at all. We can comment the code here, maybe map keys to enhanced input. And maybe we can comment this whole thing, begin play. So we've created a lightweight modular way of running this system and opening and closing it in a very easily controllable way. In the next video, we'll start programming the tree's functionality itself, starting with panning and zooming the tree.